All right, time for some practice again. If you're new to this stuff, it's basically like watching paint dry, just practicing. But this is the way that I do it. It's not necessarily fun, but it gives me results. So I'd rather do something that I'm sure gonna give me results than have a lot of fun during practice and then not have that much to show for it. And obviously this isn't everything that I do when I practice. This is just for chops maintenance and hopefully improvement as well. So if you have any questions, you can just put them in the chat and I'll get to them in between exercises. So I'm turning the mic off in between as well, so I don't get distracted. Another thing is that I have a metronome going in the background, 80 BPMs, but I decided not to have that audible for you because that would probably drive you insane having to listen to that. All right, so again, if anyone has any questions, just post them in the chat and I'll get to them between exercises. Hey, Langley. Yeah, or is your name John as well, or are you just referring to my start of every video? I don't know why that started, but it is what it is. Any questions before I get started with the next exercise? This sound, by the way, is what I like to, when I do technique practice. Either I do it with just no amp at all, or I do it with a very dry amp, but with distortion that I enjoy playing with. All right, let's do some ascending and descending thirds while I wait for some questions. All right, let's see. Hey Gary, thanks, man. Well, you know, I saw in the practice room, Piotr posted a thing about Andrew Segovia, you know, the classical guitar player, and it was an interview when he was 84 or something, and he said he practiced 5 to 6 hours a day. I mean, what excuse do I have when guitar legends like that keep practicing at that age? So we all can improve. So it's, yeah. Hey Stacy, great to have you here. Hey Ryan, Langley, give me advice about Pepsi commercial video more. Isn't that something like that? Maybe he repeats it twice. I don't remember. I think it's something like that. But advice I would be to not practice that specifically. Well, do that also, but work on. Take the, you can't see it here, but do it from here. The 1, 2, 4 fingering and 1, 3, 4 fingering, and do that in the same way that he would pick it. So if he goes, you would do that as well, right? So you would go. So you repeat it twice in each position. And so on. And do that on all string groups. You know, didn't do it exactly what you should be doing here, but, and also not at this speed, obviously. You would want to do that at basically with the speed that I tend to practice at, so. Right? Actually, I'm gonna go through the A minor scale now, doing that very thing, so you can see what I mean. And that's another thing you can do. So you can do it with these fingerings, because those are gonna be the fingerings you're gonna be using in the scales. Even if you do, you know, 2 whole steps, there's still 1, 2, 4 here, or 1, 3, 4. And so it does, this synchronization wise, it doesn't really matter, you know, how wide the spacing is. I found it's more about, can you synchronize these 3 fingers and can you synchronize these 3? You should be good with any spacing. But another way to do it is just go through the scales like this. So I'm gonna do that now so you can see. That's a good thing to practice anyway. So. So that kind of deal. So basically now I did it, you know, I did it descending as well. But I would do that. I would do that on all string groups though, because you don't want to just be able to do it in one spot. My hand inclination. Are you talking about string, whatever? If I do that to that, I try to keep it fairly neutral. But I found that if you work on a picking, starting with a downstroke, starting with an upstroke, it kind of, you know, you get good at both, so you don't need to worry about it too much. Anyway, back to my own practicing here. All right, Stacy, the thing that I'm struggling with is, do you feel like that you still need to do maintenance work daily, even at your level of technique? Uh, yes and no. If I'm playing a lot, and if I have my guitar in my hands a lot, I don't need to do specific maintenance work necessarily. But if I'm not, also it says chops maintenance here, but it is, but it's also some things that I want to get better at initially, not initially, overall. So it's not only maintenance, but I was quite pissed off about this for a while. A few years back, I was like, I've been playing guitar for, at that point, like 25 years. Like, why do I still need to do this shit? But then I thought about my training, going to the gym or running. If I stopped running for a month or two, it will absolutely suck to start again. And I think just because you got to a certain level in anything, if you stop doing it, you're not gonna stay at that level necessarily. But with that said, if you get to a certain level of technique, you get to maintain that, you need way less time than you needed to get to that point. So if you practice like alternate picking for 2 hours a day for 6 months and you really got good at it, it won't take you 2 hours per day to hold that same level. You can probably, get away with half an hour just to keep at the same level. So it will take much, much less time to keep your technique, but equally it's kind of, for me anyway, I want to get better all the time. So so it's a bit of a problem there, right? You want to push it a bit as well. But depending on how much time you have, anyway, you do need to do some maintenance, I found, but not even close to as much as you needed to get to that point. And some days you're just gonna feel worse than other days anyway. But when I reframed it and looked at what it's like with just fitness or anything else, you can't be like, well, why am I not fit? I ran every day for 6 months and then I stopped for 6 months. It's like, yeah, but why would you keep fit? Because you're not doing the thing anymore. So, but you can also reframe the whole thing to be like, well, if you just play things that you like playing and you didn't touch any technique exercise ever again, you would stay at the same level and maybe even get better anyway, right? So, but for me, I just find that if I get the technique stuff done, which I'm doing now pretty much, if I can get an hour in or more, I do more stuff than this, but this is what's on camera. If I get that in, everything else just gonna feel so much easier. And doing it once doesn't do much, but when you do it, 100 days, it's gonna make a big difference. So. So the building period would take more, absolutely. And also I think that's where people tend to go wrong, especially with alternate picking, because I find that takes longer to get down in a good way. That's also why you tend to see more people good at legato and sweep picking, but not as many good at alternate picking. I've found that it takes more practice time per day for a period to build it up. So you would probably get much further ahead by going all in like 2 hours a day for 6 months than trying to do 45 minutes a day for longer, right? So it's kind of like one analogy that I like is if I would do 10,000 push-ups in 3 months compared to 3 years, obviously doing it for 3 months would make a much bigger impact on my body, for better or worse, right? But than doing it for 3 years, even though the reps are the same. So I think there's something to it as well when it comes to volume. That depends on. I mean, I have so much stuff that in my old noggin. So I just pick something that I feel like I want to practice. And also the practice routine in itself. I think the more important thing is sitting down and practicing something because all the stuff that I'm doing here, I'm using all my fingers at some point, and I'm doing all the different string crossings when it comes to the alternate picking stuff. So even though I don't get through every exercise in the world, doesn't really matter, because that's why, you know, working on the fundamentals is so important, being able to, you know, do the 3-note per string scales, 4-note, 2, and the combinations, right? So, hey, demonetized. So it's different. But that's what I help, you know, students with in this Practice Room Pro, for example, or just a normal practice room. Having something to practice that they don't have to think about it; they can just do it and improve. So I'll have to do the heavy lifting in that, because, yeah, it's just important to pick something and stick with that, and stick with that for a bit of a longer time, especially when you're new to it. If you're already, you know, if I'm doing some maintenance, if you look back to the ones that I've done here, I've done, you know, different exercises, but in my mind they're kind of connected, because I'm working on my synchronization and the different string crossings, and that's what's important to me when it comes to this technique practice stuff. So, but I think for someone that's new to this, and when I built my technique initially, I would have a set routine and would do that for like a month at least, and then change it. Because every time you change the routine, you kind of have to learn it, and then it takes longer. So you get this cost of changing the routine, which you could spend on actually practicing instead. So yeah, more practice. Yeah, I don't know what happens here, but the archetype Petrucci just cuts out, and I have to reboot it. That's what's happened now. Luke Whitehead, that's a name. Hi John, do you have any recommendations for outside note choices for dominant chords and minor keys? No, because I don't like outside notes very much, and most of the time for outside playing I found like if you do, you basically do sidestepping and then you can do pentatonic stuff, whatever, for general outside playing. But like I said, I'm not a big fan of it. But for dominant chord in like a minor setting, so if you E dominant here, I would just, you know, you could do, you can use the altered scale, but I don't think that would be, I don't think that necessarily be considered outside, because it's just different extensions. But also in a minor key, for me that would be, I go into Yngwie mode. So, and I know you can have secondary dominance or whatever, but nah, it's not been my thing. So outside playing is not my thing, basically. And I think the best way to get that vocabulary is just to listen to players that you like who does that, and then see what they do. Because even if I say like, well, I really like the flat 9, it's like, that's still in the key, but that's quite a spicy note, right? So let's see, Stacy, I found that sometimes if I lose focus I can get sloppy with the quick transitions. Then when I focus back it has way more impact on everything. Yeah, but you know, that's why doing it slowly enough and timing yourself, you know, maybe try doing it in 5-minute periods or something, where you make sure that you keep your focus up. So that's the thing. Jake Homonym, not sure if this is the most ideal venue for saying so, but I acquire your pentatonic picking power book and I'm very like, oh, great to hear, man. Yeah, that's has been a very popular book for a reason, and I've got so many good testimonials from it. And I think the reason why it's effective is because it's not like, oh, here's the thing you can do, this is what you need to do, and then if people do that, they get the results. It was fucking ball ache to write it out though, because I wrote everything out that you're supposed to practice, but you know, that's what needed sometimes. But I'm happy that you got something out of it, man. You're welcome, Kip. And I don't want to sound dismissive here, Kip, but it's like I wouldn't sit here and be like, yeah, I know a lot of theory because I've done all the orchestral stuff and studied jazz arranging and all kinds of different things, but I'm not really into, I would suck as a jazz player, because you need to really love the style and grow the vocabulary. So when I've had students like, oh, can you teach me jazz? I could be like, yeah, I can teach you what you should practice, but if you're only into jazz, you should go to someone that specializes in that. So like for the internet, for example, Jens Larsen, the Danish dude, he could teach you all that stuff because that's what he does. And I'm sure he could teach you a lot about alternate picking as well, but he could probably send people my way because I'm, you know, deeper dive on that stuff. So I think it's important to not bullshit people. Yeah. But like if you zoom out though, everything is, you know, tension and release. So, and with the outside stuff, it's just that they lean in more into the tension. But if you don't get the release, it just sounds like, you know, my worst nightmare, free jazz, when everyone's like, oh, just do whatever you want. And I think you need drugs to both play it and enjoy that. So. Anyway, let's get back to practice. Oh, is that Yorkshire, Kip? I love Holsworth, but I think I liked Holsworth more when he was a side guy, like when he did solo, no, side projects. Because usually when he plays over his own stuff, it's, I mean, even Frank Gambale said it. He's like, yeah, half the time I have no idea what he's doing, because he was really his own own person. But I love his phrasing and his tones just over his own. And also, I haven't really listened to everything he's done, and that's probably something that I should do. Just give everything a listen. But it's like he was so special in that regard. Uh, but you know, so I get where you're coming from. But he also did a lot of that Nicholas Slonimsky, the book with all the patterns and stuff were like really, really weird scales. very systematic stuff as well. So it's yeah. But I found with Holsworth, it's same with Yngwie. When you start playing Yngwie licks, you kind of you can really hear it, and I think Holsworth as well. Whenever I hear someone that's listened to a lot of Holsworth, you can kind of hear that, and that's the exact opposite of what Holsworth liked about other people. So, like, he didn't like it when people tried to play like him, not because he was like, oh, don't play like me. It's more like, do your own thing. Yeah. Anyway, let's see. Shred, that's a fitting name for your thing here. Does he always practice slow? He can obviously play fast, but would think you lose the speed if you never push yourself speed-wise. No, you don't. And obviously, I practice slow, but then when I play for fun, which I will do after this, or that I've done earlier today or whatever, I'm gonna do faster stuff. But people, I've never had to, and I've had a shit ton of students throughout the years, and I've never had to tell a student, now make sure you also try it fast, because everyone will do that. There's something wrong with us guitar players. We're just obsessed with trying that. And I don't think there's any guitar player out there, it's probably going to be one or two because there's always outliers, but I think it's fairly uncommon that some guitar players' technique is bad because they didn't try to play fast, or they did too much slow practice. So no, I don't think that's a thing. So I mean, look at sweep picking, for example. If I do this, that's going to be faster than I need to sweep in a musical context. And anyone can do this. You can, grab a friend that doesn't play guitar, put the guitar in their hands, and then let them do this, and then this, and then try to get them to combine it. So that speed is not the problem. The problem is getting it synchronizing with the left hand. Right, so and that takes a lot of reps. To get that down. And to get that down, I did a lot of things like this. So you definitely, you need to work on the clarity and the technique before you can try to play it fast. And I've seen way more people just go for it and sound like absolute crap. Not because there's anything wrong with them, but the way they practice didn't work. So it's kind of like, the what do you call it? The definition of insanity is like you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So if you sit there and then you think all of a sudden it's just gonna work, why would it? You're just teaching your brain to do it the wrong way. Thank you, Kip. But it's and the only difference between me, right, and anyone else is that let's say I have better technique than someone else. That's not because I'm better in any way. It's just because I've done more reps of the right things, right? And I 100% believe that. I don't think there's any talent involved in this at all, in terms of like getting the technique down. That's like saying someone going to the gym. Like if you go to the gym and you lift a weight that's appropriate for where you're at now, and you do that X amount of times, you're also gonna get results. So it's, yeah. Well, how much have you done it though, Tanmay? Because I hear people say this, and I'm not saying that you're saying this, but I hear people say, oh, I've done it so much, and when I hear them, when I actually had done this with students, my view of something slow and perfect and their view is very different. They tend to end up in no man's land, where it's kind of like, it's kind of 80% there, but it's kind of off, and then you're just going to get more of that. Or they do like, oh, I did 20 minutes of slow practice, and then they sit the rest of the day just trying to go for it. So, And also it takes a long time and a lot of practice to get up to speed on things. And from the question you have here, I get super soft after a certain BPM. It sounds like you've done the old. Yes, tell me, but where do you practice though? What tempo? If you're completely honest with me now, what tempo do you practice at mostly? What do you consider slow? Yeah, but what, 16th notes at 80? In that case, you're practicing twice as fast as I do. And I don't care who you are, you could be the best player in the world. If you practice something at, I have 80 BPMs on now that you can't hear in the background, which is this. Eighth notes, right? And you can't tell me that if I do this in 16th notes, that I'm gonna control my technique in the same way. I just won't. That's not possible. But at this tempo, I can make sure that everything is perfect. I feel very relaxed. The motions are not doing anything like this, and if I see something wrong, I can fix it. But that's what I mean, that people's idea of slow is not slow most of the time. So that's what I'm trying to get across here. It's great to hear, Kip. Hey, Ian. Well, I had a student that I did this specific thing with, Shred. And basically, he came to me and he wanted to play Master Puppets, right? Yeah, that's way too fast, Tanmay. You should do eighth notes do that. Do eighth notes. Practice everything in eighth notes at 80 BPM max, if that's perfect for you, right? That's the max tempo. You might be having to sit at 60 BPMs. So you have to be really honest with yourself, right? So you do that perfectly. You won't. I don't think your practice is high quality enough. Mine wouldn't be at that tempo. I could do it, but I would improve more by doing it at half the tempo. So that's why I do it at this tempo, right? All right, back to Shred. Hey, Vincent. So when it comes to down picking, right? So the student that I said, he wanted to play that. And the way that he had gone about it before he came to me, he said he'd been sitting for 6 months, 5 minutes a day. I mean, five minutes isn't a long time, but he would do 5 minutes a day, put the metronome at 80 BPMs, do 16th notes. He would be sitting like this, and until he couldn't do it anymore, right? And then he would rest and then do it again. And I kind of knew where this was going, and I thought, like, well, how did that work out? Not great. So basically, he would do this, and then about 45 seconds in, he started to tense up his whole arm and end up sitting like this, and then totally, fail and conk out. And I asked him, like, well, in 6 months, how much extra time did you gain? And he basically said, like, well, maybe I could do it, before he would conk out at 50 to 60 seconds. Now he would do it at like 1:15 or something, right? And that's a very tiny improvement, I would say, for 6 months of practice. So what we did with him instead was to work on bursts. So he would go, we do it at tempo, but he could only do it as as many notes you could do without tensing up. So this is a bit different than this stuff, right? But I don't think you build stamina necessarily. I think you find a technique that work for your down picking, right? So, and if whenever you get into a territory, if I start tensing up here, then I'm cooked. Then I'm gonna be like, it's not gonna work. So I think it's less about stamina. I think it's more about finding a technique where you can keep this going. If you can keep this going for like 2 minutes at the same tempo and you build up to that or whatever it might be, you can probably do it for a longer time than that anyway. So that's a bit of a different thing. But however you practice, you need to make sure you get the reps clean, right? So important. Jake homonym, so with double bass practice, alternate between 8th and 16th notes ever so many measures, you find a similar process all useful with guitar practice. I don't do that myself. More, I do it if I, work on, I might work on like, so I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. So basically going between 16th notes and quintuplets in this case, and 16th notes and 16th note triplets and so on, right? And I got all of this stuff from this book, which you should get. Jake homonym, Mike Mangini, genius of a drummer, and about practicing in general. And he even says it here about practicing, right? If you practice slowly, you're going to improve much faster. So basically, he said, let's see. All right, it says here, although it may seem contradictory, it's been proven time and time again that playing slowly and really focusing on your technique yields much greater increases in speed than practicing at the highest possible tempo. So I think this is quite a universal thing for how humans learn things. I like to talk about if you're trying to learn golf and you go out on the golf course and then you just swing your driver around, you're not going to get a good drive, will you? You need to get it. Just because you're doing reps, if they're shit reps, you're going to get more of that. And that's where I think people go wrong. And it's also not generally people's fault, because when you look on YouTube, you look on social media, you get these ads for like, oh, I can, you're going to play so much faster in only 7 days with my magical system. And it's bullshit, actually. Because that's not how it works. You need to, that's most likely in those courses, it's going to be like, oh, do a speed burst. And then you're going to be like, oh, I can do something a bit faster now, and you feel like it's a big success. But your technique hasn't really improved much. To get a technique that really works, that you can rely on, you need to do the work. That's why guitar and music is so great, because it doesn't matter if your name is Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or whoever, if they wanted to get good at guitar, they would have to do the same practice as anyone else. No one can do it for you. But it's really, for me, it's kind of sad to see people that spend so much time, so they actually spend the time, but they don't get better because they do it in a way that's not effective. And, my YouTube channel is fairly small, and it's not a very sexy thing to talk about, like, practice slow, and it will take much longer than you want it to take to get better, but if you do it right, you're gonna get there. Anyone can get there, but that's not sexy. People want like results yesterday with minimal effort, but I can't do anything about that, so. Ted May, that tension thing is so important, but I have become very objective on the playing that I might be wrong to you, it feels normal. Well, I distill a lot of the things from it for guitar, so I wouldn't say it's necessarily but it's a good book anyway. But it's a lot of drum stuff in it. So, Ian. Yeah, but also down picking, you know, it's kind of, you need to find some, you know, there where you find a good sort of trade-off between the sound you get and how it feels to do it, and not get into. But then you probably know this better than I do, because I don't do a lot of down picking necessarily. I love the old Metallica stuff, but uh, it, once you start tensing up the wrist, it's done. You can't recover from that. But as you do this more and more, and you really stop yourself, and anytime you feel any excess tension, and excess tension is quite interesting as well, because, hey Jordan, because if you have, you know, too much tension when you walk, it's gonna look like a shit your pants. If you have too little tension, you're gonna fall over. So there is a perfect amount of tension to do anything, right? So don't feel too neurotic about like, oh, am I tensing up too much? You need to find what level of tension do I need to get the sound that I want, and can I sustain this level of tension at a higher tempo? Anyway, that's all I have for today. I'm done with my practice now, and yeah, again, if you want to join the Practice Room Pro, and you might not know what the hell that is, it's basically where I can help you one-on-one. We have Ian in here, and Jorda, I believe, is joining soon. So check that out before I raise the price to $99. So hopefully it makes sense that you go through a range from 95 to 200 increments, slower to warm up and focus on taking work and fast tempos to work on testing boundaries. Yeah. I mean, I don't play drums, obviously, but I think practice is practice, and there's a lot of principles that work in both instruments. That's all right. All right, anyway, if you have any ideas about joining the Practice Room Pro, it's gonna go up in price tomorrow, Sunday at midnight. So that's just the starting price, and it's actually the amount of time I put into that, it's not sustainable to have it at the current price, but I knew that starting, but now we have a good group of people already, so check that out. And great to see you, Kip, as well. New guy, always fun. So have a great Saturday, everyone, and see you tomorrow.